Please welcome Tyler Henson to the Prime People Podcast, founder, team leader at the Henson Team. With his wife, Jackie, they've built an incredible business focused on celebration, simplicity, and service. They actually launched the business after they had a very frustrating real estate experience and have done a couple things to really make the process seamless and create an incredible client experience. If you're curious about that experience, how he overcame addiction to absolutely kill it and change his entire perspective on life and business, you're going to want to tune in. Share this episode with somebody you think will enjoy it, and we'll see you on the show. It's a different world out there in terms of what you can do with social media, especially, in the real estate world, with what you and I see on a daily basis. How much of your business are you actually taking from social media and turning into real life deals, do you find?
Honestly, it's probably a small percentage. We have been, pretty effective with that. What really changed for us is shifting our focus from like real estate toward more personal brand. And so what that looks like is like we went from, posting a lot of like real estate related content, like almost all real estate related content, to a solid blend, right, of our personal life, just us and who we are. And then even with the real estate related content that we were posting, it was like, how can I show a little bit of my personality in this video, not just this house? And that's when we actually started getting people reaching out. What happens more often, I think, than like for us anyway, more than real buyers and sellers reaching out, wanting to like use our services, is referrals from like other people, like not necessarily agents, but also agents. So we see like, just people who enjoy our content and like following us. They have a friend that is, selling their home or thinking about moving to Nashville, and they'll connect us, or an agent. A lot of times it's agents that we met, but we've definitely gotten referrals from agents that we haven't met, because it's like, I can't think of anybody else in Nashville. I see your content all the time. I really, enjoy, your content and following you guys and what you do. So I'm going to get you connected. Seen a lot of that more than anything. And I think a lot of times us as real estate agents, I think we get it wrong, thinking that everything is about the lead and everything is about the sale. It's really all about the audience. It's all about the people. Everything is, right? The whole business, as a whole, not just the content that we create, but we don't actually sell houses. We sell our services to people, and we serve people. That's our business, not the homes, and we begin to look at everything through that filter, and the way that we talk about our business and the way that we, serve our clients, everything begins to change, right? And our content begins to change, and it begins to attract people, right? Because we're not posting about houses, we're connecting with people just through our business.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Too many people turn everything into a business online as well too. And like I said earlier, I think I understand that people look at social media as an extension of business and they want it to generate opportunities for them. But I've generated probably more opportunities being authentically myself, a human being, than I was posting anything real estate related, right? You're going to attract people to your ecosystem. I even remember when you guys made that shift to the personal branding side of things. I'd see you guys doing your morning workouts, and I'm into fitness as well too. And it's something that I would always think about, man, they're out there killing it. I better work a little bit harder. But that natural progression was when, Shannon and I spent quite a bit of time in Tennessee. If we look at acquiring something, you guys are naturally top of mind, not just because of your real estate expertise, because I want to go looking at stuff with somebody that I would actually eat a meal with and laugh with and have fun. Because like all the most successful people I know, 80% of what they talk about isn't the actual business. The 20% is usually doing the deal, buying the truck, buying the house, whatever it's going to be. The 80% is, how's your kids? What are you guys working on? What's life like? How was the birthday? How's Christmas? It's all of those things, which makes the whole process a lot more fun, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So what about you? I know you post a lot of, great content online. Followed you for a long time. How much business do you gain from that, or what does that business look like?
A lot. I mean, it's always been heavily organic and digital for me. With people that
Yeah.
don't necessarily even interact in the DMs or not even the DMs, the likes and the comments, right? I remember when I
Hmm.
started posting videos, 2013, I was doing a video a day and nobody was liking them. Nobody was posting them. But then I would see people in the street and they would just be top of mind, be like, hey, I saw a video you did on this weird clause in a contract. It saved me from messing up over here. Here's a $2,500 donation to Habitat for Humanity. That was a real thing that happened with the builder, which led to me actually selling their product, right? These
Wow.
days, yeah, I mean, there's two main brands. There's Prime and then there's Justin, right? And I think the
Yeah.
Prime brand is consumer facing, buyers, sellers, investors across our territory. And it's been a lot of fun creating content, knowing who we're talking to and like how we can serve them on that platform. Mine's a little bit different from the standpoint that I'm talking to other agents like yourself, trying to share blueprints of like stuff that we've done that's worked, stuff that hasn't, to save you time and money. And I'm still in production selling a lot of real estate. So I'm trying to be consistent with telling people where I am in my market because I cover a big territory
Hmm.
and just naturally get into conversations with people. And I find it's given me a lot more opportunity to get in conversation with people in the DMs more so than a sales funnel, right? And why I'm saying that is when I comment, text the word guide for my 5-step blueprint to buying in Grand Bend, I actually don't have an automation set up. You message me, we talk, and then I do have a guide that I can send you, but there's a human conversation that happens first. So the way I'm thinking about social media, AI, is I'm trying to use it to become more human rather than just use all of the systems to automate everything and not feel like you're talking to me. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. So you're using it more as like a lead connection rather than a lead capture.
100%. It's a sorting
Yeah.
mechanism, right? Like if you
Yeah.
want to know about properties that are on the lake in Grand Bend, great. If you're a commercial or land developer in London, it's a different thing. And like I've also been playing with doing my commercial content primarily on LinkedIn, doing more of
Hmm.
my residential stuff on Facebook, and then Instagram is probably a blend of the two, right? If that makes sense.
It does. Yeah. So how does that content differ between like creating for your personal brand and then creating for, Prime? Because, for us, like we have a really small team, right? It's just my wife and I. So I don't see the need, right,
Sure.
in pumping up, Henson Team as a brand, because that's really just who we are. However, if that were to ever grow, right, it would need to have its own presence. Like how does that shift look like for you as far as like the difference in content, creation? Because I know you're super intentional about it.
Yeah, I mean, Prime is independent of me at this point, right? Like it's big enough where we have enough agents that cover a large territory that they need to have that banner, and they're not buying me necessarily every single time they
Hmm.
hire Prime. But there are instances where they are getting me and my team, and we've created a very clear difference between the two. Also within Prime, like we do commercial farms, investing, residential, new development. And I've even thought of like each of those brands are almost independent now, where Prime Commercial is
Hmm.
Prime Commercial. You're buying our systems, our standards, our leverage. But I think like when it comes down to it, you see this with Ryan Serhant, the personal brand is infinitely more valuable than the individual corporate brands because individual corporate brands can be bought and sold. The thing
Hmm.
that I think will continue to drive your business and you'll be able to have financial freedom and impact is doing what you guys are doing and building that strong personal brand, scaling that out, and then your Henson team becomes like your Nike swoosh on your shoe. Where if you happen to choose to co-sign somebody and they have that Nike swoosh, then the people hiring them have an expectation that they're getting your systems knowledge, leverage, and everything else, right?
Yeah.
Which I think is totally achievable. But going back a step to the markets and the marketing that we're doing, we're pivoting and actually doing a lot of real estate content right now because, dude, it is a tough market up here right now. Like we are working
Yeah.
15 times harder to do the same amount of deals. Canada and the US ain't the same, I don't think. Can you give me a snapshot as to Nashville, what's happening in your marketplace? What are you seeing out there?
Yeah, absolutely. it's still just a more even, market. And sometimes it just doesn't make sense. There's properties that, I see hit the market and I think this will never sell and it moves very quickly. And I see another property. I'm like, man, I wish I had a buyer for this. It's such a great deal. It's going to fly off the market and it just sits. Like some stuff just doesn't make sense, but movement is happening. Really what we're seeing, and if you're not paying attention to this in the Nashville market, or you're not in that space, you'll overlook it. It is in that over $4 million
Mm.
territory that we're seeing not necessarily just things hot and crazy and multiple offers and flying off the market, but where things are actually moving. I just looked this week and there's 168 properties within the Nashville area that have
Huh.
sold this year, closed this year over that $4 million mark,
Wow.
which is unbelievable, for Nashville. That's a very high price point. Really anything, over that $5 million mark is just really, really huge. Just a few years ago, even during the, post-COVID madness, that was just, not crazy common. So what we're seeing is that people are still moving for lifestyle. And the people in those price ranges that we're talking to, on a regular basis, maybe they're not in a hurry to move, but lifestyle is definitely their motivation. And I get that because Nashville is definitely a lifestyle city, and it's not for everyone, right? Because it is, when I say lifestyle, it is a particular lifestyle, right? It's not like Miami where you go to be seen, right?
Mm.
It is where people of means, people of wealth, of celebrity status can go and live a normal, low key life, right? There's definitely some luxurious things about Nashville, but what it really comes down to is that it's just a low key city where people can enjoy living and they can have their space to do that. And that's attracting a lot of people, right? I know that, of course, not having state income taxes is a pretty big thing, here in the US. So I know that's part of the attraction. But when people reach out to us, it's about the lifestyle. Like
Mhm.
everything, all of the conversations are around like, yeah, that little piece is great, the no state income taxes. But everything is about the lifestyle. And the lifestyle that they can live here is what they're desiring.
And you live that lifestyle yourself, right? So I think that's kind of a natural fit where it makes it easy for you to associate with people that are maybe looking for that. Going to your background, did you grow up in Tennessee or Nashville area?
I did. I grew up very rural, small town, Tennessee. Didn't grow up, in the Nashville high life, for sure. But I think that's part of the beauty of it is a lot of
Sure.
people, it's not that downtown thriving music scene. The music is great and that is attractive, to a lot of people. But it's really those outskirts of Nashville, where people can get some land. And we had a client recently ended up, deciding on a different city, but that was really what they were drawn to. Is actually a direct referral from, Ryan Serhant, how you and I got connected.
Sure.
But it was about the lifestyle for him. He saw that he could get this legacy property in a state in Nashville, and you still are close, to great restaurants. You're still close to shopping. You're still fairly close to an airport, and then you have all this space, where you can have land, and live that. And so I can definitely bridge the gap there because I've lived in, rural Tennessee, my whole life. Like I know what, all that's about. And I know what I enjoy about it, and I see people fall in love with it that come from these, larger cities like New York and, on the West Coast and things like that. And it's just incredible to see them love that. But no, I always Tennessee, homegrown, but definitely, more on the rural side. So I guess that's really, what connects, when I go to showing people those types of properties.
I love that. And did you and Jackie meet like early on in life, or how did you meet her?
We met actually at church.
Okay.
Yeah, she has a sister that lives in the town that I grew up in. Her husband, guy that she married is from there, and they settled there and, had kids, and he started pastoring the church that I was going to. And she came up to visit. Wasn't even one of those like setup kind of things. It was
Yeah.
just, just one of those things that, just kind of happened. And then, so in April, we'll be celebrating our 10th wedding anniversary, which is
Awesome.
crazy. Yeah, she was the first outsider that I helped move to Tennessee, before I even had my real estate license.
That's amazing. And I know part of your story from the standpoint that you guys were really frustrated with the purchasing process when you bought a house, which is kind of why you got into real estate. I never heard the story from you before. So like would love to just pick that apart. What were the things that you didn't like about the process, and how did that impact how you built the Henson team from there?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm glad you asked it. Really and truly, I guess what made it such a big deal, and not that, of course, it's always things like that are always more important to us than they are to anybody else, right? And I totally
Mhm.
understand that. But my past was really a big reason why this was such a big deal to us. And I didn't expect to be celebrated for that. I guess I expected it not to be such a frustrating process, like it, not necessarily that anybody else had to make it fun for me and make it great for me. It's just
Mhm.
it kind of zapped the excitement out of it, with how frustrated we were, and nothing bad even happened. So just to back that up a little bit, in my past, I have a history of drug addiction.
Yep.
My late teens and early 20s, battled with pain pill addiction. And that just entire lifestyle, financial problems, ended up purchasing a business. It was like a fitness facility that was really run down. Tried to build that back up. I did to an extent, but because of my addiction, I mismanaged money and ended up losing that business. And I really just kind of gave up on, these aspirational dreams, in business, that I once had.
Mhm.
I ended up, giving everything over to God, completely set free from all of my addictions, just found complete freedom and transformation in my entire life. And that was really all that mattered to me, at that point. But God blessed me with a good job. I was actually an operations manager at a transportation company. My wife Jackie and I, we just got married, and then here we are, like buying our first home together. It was a really big deal, for me to be at that point in my life from where I was, and really just didn't even have these big aspirations for my life anymore. I really just valued having peace and joy in my life, and but here I was. God blessed me beyond that, right? I got that and more, and it was just. I guess part of it was me being an operations manager. I was really big on systems and processes and everything flowing smoothly and, good communication. And really all it was, when I really look back, is it was just a little bit of communication could have went a long way,
Yeah.
because we were in the dark on so much. We didn't know how the process went. We didn't know what next steps were at any point in time throughout the whole process. And everything, looking back, everything was so smooth. But because we didn't have communication about what
Mhm.
next steps were, and that everything was going well and that everything was on track, and then this is how the timeline of how things went, being in the dark and the unknown like that, right? We just had this anxiety about, this big decision that we're making. It was really hard to be excited about it when we were stressed about what's next. And is this supposed to be happening this way? Is this good? Is this bad? We were just totally clueless. And so, everything closed and went smoothly and went fine, but it just kind of stuck with me. I ended up telling, my wife, Jackie, I was like, I really want to get my license. I want to learn this business, and I want to give people the experience that I wish we would have had. I think just some simple processes, systems and processes, and, communication would just go so far on this. I've always loved houses. I worked construction in my past, know a lot about it. And I really think that I could just kind of help some people on the side, and not really kind of push a business, but just, make sure that the people that I work with isn't left in the dark like we were. And she's
Yeah.
always been my biggest cheerleader. She said, "Go for it, do it," and of course, it took off. You know what I mean? It took off, and it really kind of got hard to juggle doing both. I was working in the office, 50, 60 hours a week, some weeks, 6 days, 5 to 6 days a week. And it was really difficult to juggle both. And so then, came down to this question of, well, what is our next steps? What does this look like? Because we didn't plan for this to be something that we, pulled off and put everything into. This was just something that we were supposed to help a few people on the side, so that we could maintain a high level of service. And then it just kind of developed into this dream of, being able to do this together and serve people together. And, which eventually led to us going all in, which is, kind of a whole other story. It really exploded after that.
I love that. Never been fired for over communicating. I've definitely been fired for under communicating. I think that's one of the biggest things every agent struggles with. So, I mean, so you guys were buyers. Walk me through, like, knowing what you know now, at what points during the transaction would you have communicated better? Was it like before you even started looking at houses? Was it when you're doing the actual contract, once you're under contract? What are the things that you've changed and implemented that you think make the biggest difference for your buyers on feeling that full level of service today?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I just kind of, I can walk you through, a simple version of what we do, which kind of, answers that question.
Sure.
It's just trying to be really thorough with upfront with setting expectations for how the whole process works. And what we do on the contract end from beginning to close to move in. And then we always get this, like, bewildered look, because it's all, we're explaining all this stuff and say, but don't worry, we'll guide you a step at a time, right?
Yeah.
When it comes to this, we'll tell you this is where we're at, and then we'll let you know what's next. And that's basically what we do is
Sure.
explain everything on the front end, 30,000-foot view, and then we take it a step at a time, right? When we're writing the contract, writing up the offer, we say, hey, in the event that they accept this, they could counter. At that point, we can, counter
For
them,
sure.
or we can accept it, kind of go through that whole explanation and say, once we reach an agreement, these will be our next steps. But don't sweat that. When we get there, we'll let you know. And then so then it's always, hey, here's where we're at now, and these are our next steps.
Yeah, and I think during that process too, like, you know me well enough to know I talk really fast. So, like, when I get excited about something, I'm like, I tell them everything is going to happen. But I say the same thing. I'm like, I'm going to do everything, but these are the things that are likely going to happen. And I think it goes a long way too. That, I keep telling my team, they want an expert that knows their craft, but ultimately they want somebody that's going to drive the bus. If they have to drive the bus themselves, they don't need us ultimately,
Yeah.
right? One thing
Yeah.
that I've noticed some people struggling with, the newer agents especially, that we're really trying to train them on, is always doing it the same way every single time. And I've told them, like, we have checklists, we have documents, have it open while you're doing it until it becomes second nature. Do you have anything that you follow in terms of a checklist to make sure you walk through the process every single time? Or is it innate? Like, you guys have done enough reps that you just know what to tell them to expect? I'm just curious about how you do that.
We started with checklist.
Yeah.
And that kind of gave us a visual, and that way, we didn't overlook anything. But as we kind of honed in on the process, I'm a big believer in, like, self automation, which is like, if this then that, like, so certain actions trigger other actions.
Yeah.
And so then when you self automate like that, you don't tend to forget things, right? So, like, every time that we call, let's just, for example, every time that we call a buyer and tell them we have an accepted contract, right? We celebrate that. We pump that up. Like, this is a really big deal. Then we always, before we get off the phone, okay, here's our next steps. We got to get earnest money turned in. I'll text you how much it is. I'll text you instruction details on how to get that turned in. Depending on the method that they're going to get that turned in, like, we might help them with that or whatever. I said, then then I will text you at another point, tonight or tomorrow, whatever time it is, about getting the inspection scheduled and set up. And so we don't forget to have that conversation because it's always happening in that order.
Mhm.
because that task feels so incomplete. Calling them and celebrating being under contract feels incomplete if we don't say, all right, this is great. Here's what's next. Here's our, earnest money, get inspection scheduled. We'll take care of the paperwork, sending that to the title company and the lender and all this stuff. Business manager, whoever needs it. Then, right, on the back end, same thing. If this, then that, we get off that phone call, the first thing that we do is we send that contract to the people who needs it and let them know, hey, we're under contract. There's the contract details. Here's the contact information, for, the buyers if they need it, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think that's key, right? I like the
Yeah.
if best in that order, because you know that there's always a sequential order. It's interesting. I didn't know you were an operations manager. It all makes sense now, because in that position, you were probably very logical in your process because it needed to be smooth. Real estate transactions are anything but smooth. I think one of the biggest advantages of having a skilled agent is creative problem solving, right? And then being able to be level headed in a very tense situation. I mean, you talked about buying your house. I know every time I bought or sold property, all of my own advice goes out the window and the emotions can go up here. It's good to have a counselor or somebody by your side, but I like how you guys have built it with that kind of simple, repeatable process in mind. Now, I also noticed you said you wanted to keep it to a point where you can deliver that same sort of service over and over and over, and that same high level care, right? Because it really does matter, that feeling that people get. Have you ever reached any points where you felt overwhelmed? There was too much to do. You were traveling, and what adjustments did you make to recalibrate back to kind of the core of what matters to you guys?
Man, that's such a good question. We did actually, I think in 2021, I think it was 2021, we did 54 transactions, just Jackie and myself, and that was a lot,
For sure.
right? And as we all know, there's some transactions that are just smooth as butter, and there's some transactions that everything goes wrong at every turn. And we just started noticing that our clients that had no problems, they probably needed our attention the most, because like everything was going smoothly, and we ended up spending a lot of our time, right, with the ones that were having issues and having problems and things were coming up, because we were, like you said, we were problem solving.
Yeah, for sure.
And so for one, it kind of took intention, recalibrating, that we started. For one thing that we did was we started checking in with people whether we thought they needed it or not, because that was one area that I think that our if this then that kind of fell short, because if there was nothing triggering the next response, there was dead space. And you never want dead space, right? When you're in the middle of a transaction, you never want dead space with your client where there's a lack of communication. Even if you've already said, hey, here's what's next, and it's going to be this, point in time when that happens, there still needs to be a check-in. Hey, how's the transition going? Do you have everything set up for your move? They're not going to need your help with that stuff. Most people are not going to want to take it. They're going to want to have control over moving their own stuff. However, just general care and concern, so that was one small thing that we did. One thing that we thought that we needed was another agent, because we thought that if we had this many transactions going on and we didn't want the opportunity for our service to drop, even if nothing slipped through the cracks as far as our process went, we still wanted that, like you were talking about, that personal interaction and connection throughout the whole thing. I don't even think that we would have had to have that in our own process, but as we got into the business, it's not what we wanted to do, for our clients, right? Like as long as, if buying our home, going back to that, if I would have just known what was happening next and a timeline for that, I would have been good. Like, don't talk to me for 2 weeks. I don't really care, as long as I know what's happening and when. But that's not really, how we wanted to do things. We actually wanted to take that, a step further, because some people don't have to have that conversation in between. And some people, struggle with not having that, right? And so the ones that don't have to have it, they're not going to be bothered by it, so let's just implement that. But anyway, going back to what I was saying, we thought we needed another agent. ended up being, I think, a mistake at that point in our business.
Sure.
To be honest, what I've always loved about our real estate business is serving our clients. It's the people, just like I mentioned before. What I love most about it, I love houses, I love luxury homes, I love construction and the construction process. However, I don't really care about any of that stuff without good people that I'm working with and good connections with those people. Those relationships make it so worth everything, right, that we have to deal with in this industry. And I was missing some of that because I was busy training, guiding, and leading. And I realized I do have a strong natural desire to be a leader, and I, want to, flex that muscle and be able to do that. I just don't think that is the right structure for that, because everything that I loved about my business, serving clients, it took a backseat at times because I was having to, train, teach, coach, that sort of thing. So we then ended up, just dialing that back, focusing on our process. It's like, well, we can do this. It's just a matter of systems and processes. And then that was one of the small things that we implemented, was just, regular, consistent check-ins, whether there was anything to communicate to them or not. And it's just setting reminders for that. It's not the best system, I don't think, but
I think a lot of people are going to get rid of it too after the whole Zillow debacle, right? I think that's coming down the pipeline eventually. So
yeah, I think so. I mean, it's just all of them though.
yeah,
I mean, really, if anybody is worried about data, it's all out there. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like,
that's
there's
true.
no
Yeah,
there's no
yeah.
safe CRM. They're all after your data.
Oh, for
But
sure. We use it as well. It's different in Canada. Zillow doesn't have as big a presence up here as well too. But I've always explained to people, like a CRM, it's names, phone numbers, emails, tags, and stages. Like you can export all
yeah,
of that, put it in a spreadsheet if you want. It's what you do with it that actually matters, right? And I
yeah,
think how, like, this actually goes to the next transition that I was going to do, to talk about marketing. Because if you're marketing yourself, they can take all your data. It doesn't matter, because they're still going to want to work with you guys
hmm
because of your personal brand. So can you give me an idea on how you positioned your brand in such a competitive landscape? Because I'm thinking of the years, like pandemic, the market was going absolutely crazy, but you guys have done a great job building that personal brand. So what was the strategy, and how did you position yourself in such a competitive marketplace?
Well, to be completely candid, like it or love it, when we decided to really expand our business and wanted to get into the luxury space, just because I thought that, we could serve, those types of clients at a high level. What we started seeing when we would dabble in it a little bit is we started seeing that. I think now it's a bit different. I think there's been a little bit of a shift, but especially like back then, there was not a very high level of service being provided, to, luxury buyers and sellers in Nashville. It was all based off of personal connection rather than level of service. So we knew that, I mean, we didn't think that we could just totally like disrupt that market, but we just thought that we could serve people in that space at a high level. So what we did was we bought into those, luxury zip codes.
Mm-hmm.
And is probably not the best strategy today, but what we did was we did our best to meet those people in person.
Mm-hmm.
And just get that appointment scheduled, meet them in person. Of course, that's, safer, with there being two of us, but we would go and meet them in person, show them the house, make the personal connection. But I don't know the exact statistic, but like, I mean, it was probably pretty close to 80-90% of the time, if we could meet them in person, we could win them as a client.
Mm-hmm.
Because in the madness of all of it, people didn't shop around a whole lot. They found somebody they trusted and they stuck with it.
For sure.
And that was really our goal, is just to be somebody that, if we can connect with them, great. Ryan Serhan, I think, does a really good job of like teaching this. And it's like literally everybody has something in common.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody. You just have to find it.
Yeah.
And that's such a sales thing to do. But really and truly, when it comes to just real authentic human connection, I mean, that could be a master class right there in just, focusing on not our differences, not, the things that we argue about, but focusing on where we're alike,
Mm-hmm.
and appreciate that, about each other. And so we would do that. We would find what we have in common, make that connection, build that trust, because like we are professionals, but we're also there to connect with people and build a relationship, and people want to work with people that, that they like and trust. And so then it just, it ended up spreading, because the pressure was there to not let them down,
Yeah.
if they're going to trust us, then we're going to be trustworthy and we're going to knock it out of the park. And so then we were able to go in and do that, right? And then what we realized as well is like, of course, everybody wants to do luxury and they don't know what all that really means. But like for me, like what I realized is like these people don't have time to mess with somebody that they don't trust.
Mm-hmm.
And if they trust me, then I'm not going to let them down. I'm going to do a really good job for them, and I'm going to take things off their plate, because to them, the difference is, for me at that point in my life when I bought my house, that was the biggest thing that I had going on. Like at that point in my life, other than getting married, which I'd done earlier that year, that was the biggest thing in my life, and was definitely the biggest financial decision. For a lot of these people that are in this luxury price point, it's not.
Yeah.
They have so many other more important things, and so many things that are more important to them. And a lot of them, even family, which is interesting to see, when you have a certain level of wealth, and you have these good-hearted people, their families are more important to them than buying or selling a house. Their businesses are more important, that kind of thing. And so they need somebody that they can trust. And it's like that's the space where we can thrive. And like once we really realize that, it wasn't really even about, that big luxury paycheck anymore, because there's a lot of risks that goes with that, as you know. And you already know how big the marketing budget has to be for things like that. And that's not something that everybody can handle. But being able to, there's just something so fulfilling about being able to serve somebody, to that level. I had, it was the craziest thing, I see, sometimes you see these videos, like the wildest thing that you realize about like somebody with wealth or means or whatever, and it was so funny. We go to one of our clients' homes that we helped them buy. Very successful couple, business owners, but just very down to earth. And I saw that the fuel door for his SUV was open. It's like a Range Rover or something. And I closed it for him. So then we went inside. I told him, I was like, "Oh, hey, you left your fuel door open. I went ahead and shut it for you." And he just kind of chuckled. And he said, "Oh, no, I meant to do that. I have a service that comes by and fills my fuel tank."
That's crazy. That's funny.
But that was his priorities,
Yeah.
that was his priorities, is that he needed to be able to focus. It was really important to him too. I knew him, really well. It was really important to him to spend time with his family when he wasn't working,
Yeah.
So I'm like, he's not worried about that. He's not worried about the little extra cost of having somebody, fill the tank on his vehicle, because when he gets in on Saturday morning to go to breakfast, with his wife and daughters, he doesn't want to have to worry about stopping and getting fuel. He wants to go and, take them to their favorite brunch spot and, have a good time. And so, it was funny when we went to actually list that house for him and they were ready to sell it. He's kind of had that same mentality and that same level of trust. Well, you handle it. You take care of it. I trust you. Just take care of it. Even when it came to negotiations, it was the craziest thing. He
Yeah.
was like, "Well, just get as much as you can. I trust you. I'm not worried about it. You
Yeah.
just take care of it." We're not going to take that lightly. We're not going to take advantage of that. And, that's the space that we can, really thrive in. But it took some creative approaches, to get into that space. And I hate to even say earn the right to be there, but just, get the credibility of the experience, from that. And it was just a unique position we were able to be in, because so many people were moving from out of state that we didn't have to have those, tight local connections in order to like kind of break into that space. We were able to be just a front facing real estate guides for the people that were coming into the area. And there's a lot of different opinions about that, but for the most part, what we saw is just like-minded people, that were looking for that lifestyle that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, I can imagine. Was the local community very protective of outsiders coming in and changing what made Nashville or Tennessee?
I wouldn't say protective. I think they were just a lot of people were
Concerned.
concerned.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of
Yeah.
people were concerned, but it's so funny. Like Nashville, Franklin, Brentwood areas, they while there have been a lot of people, right, grow up there, not a lot of people are multi-generational. They came from other areas, like, Brentwood and Franklin is, always been, an affluent area. The businesses that are in Nashville, when people, executives move into town, that's where they live. And that's had the best school systems and all that. It was so funny, growing up. So I was in DECA, which is like a high school, like marketing, group. And we went to this, I made it as an alternate at this state competition, right? And so I just got to go and have fun. I didn't have to compete unless somebody dropped out
Mhm.
or got disqualified for something stupid or whatever, So I got to go, and I was just, up there, just, my own version of high school networking. And I would always have like these people, and a lot of girls are like, "Oh, where are you from? Are you from Alabama?" Because of my accent. And they didn't have one, and I'm like, "No, I'm here for the state competition. I'm from this state. But it was just so interesting, even then, nobody had, the Southern accent, like I did, growing up in rural Tennessee. So, I mean, people are protective of the things that they love, but,
Of course.
people have been in and out of, the area, for a long time, already.
Yeah, and I've seen that at all my markets, right? And I was talking to a gentleman the other day who some of our rural coastal towns are turning into cities, right? They've just changed over time,
Hmm.
population growth, subdivisions. And I was like, if you go back 50 years, when you were a kid, the people that came before you, did they complain that the town was getting bigger, going from 400 to 2,000 people? Yeah. I'm like, well, it's the same thing
Yeah.
forever. It's going to go 2 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 to grow. And people will leave a big town to move to a small town, but like going to New York to Nashville is one thing, going from Nashville to Franklin's another. And we see people are people at the end of the day,
Yeah.
right? It's all how you kind of integrate within the community. I think a lot of it probably had to do with them being scared of them bringing their politics and their views from places that seem to be falling apart into a place where, they're coming for new opportunity and not integrating within that new opportunity, which is another conversation for another day, right?
Absolutely, yeah, and that was everybody's concern, really and truly. It wasn't necessarily about someone not from there
For
moving
sure.
to the area. Yeah, it's just everyone, just assumes that there's a threat to what they have. When
Of
other
course.
people come in, and the concerns, about people trying to change it.
Hey man, I
Um,
fish. If you go telling people about your fishing spots, that's a whole thing. Other fishermen get really angry at you, right? So I get it.
yeah,
Last question I have for you: like, if
yeah.
you were speaking to a brand new agent or Tyler 1.0, what advice would you give yourself today, knowing what you know now?
Ooh. That's interesting. I always wonder, would I even take the same risks now? Knowing what I know now, would I even be willing, if knowing the outcome, of course I would, but I'm just saying, the wisdom that I have now, would I do those risky of things, or would I play it safer? I would just say yes. Say yes to opportunities when you're young. There's so many teachings out there about saying no to things and drawing boundaries and all these things. And, healthy boundaries are always good. But when you're building something, say yes to every opportunity, as long as it doesn't involve breaking some kind of, ethical rules or, moral code, within yourself. Say yes to every opportunity, and say yes to connect with people. Don't think that connecting with people is not working, because you got to have both. In order to have a fulfilling life and a fulfilling business, you have to have both. So say yes. Say yes to the coffee meeting. Say yes to the appointment in the town that you don't normally work in. Say yes, to every opportunity, because each opportunity leads to another opportunity. And it always happens that way. It's not about that particular thing, but if we do everything that we do with excellence, it's going to lead to something else always.
I love that mentality. And well, you, Jack, you're absolutely killing it. I would encourage everybody watching and listening to this, to go check them out online if you want a direct connection, or if you're thinking of buying or selling in the area, would love to connect with them as well. I loved meeting you both when I was at Sell It 2024. I'm looking forward to connecting with you again in person, hopefully in Tennessee, if not potentially Sell It 2026, brother. But we'll definitely have you on another episode in the future. Excited to see where you guys are going.
Yes, Justin, thank you so much, buddy. I really appreciate it. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah, you're a phenom. Thank you.